coming back to what you want to do or what you're doing in the art market, I can also summarize your activity in terms of art management, artist management business. You have some artists in your portfolio, and you try to drive your artistic career, try to help them, try to find the optimal networks for them. In itself, don't you think that it's an artist management company in itself?
It has elements of that, yes. I mean, I don't like to call myself a manager because I don't have an economic relationship in that sense. My economic relationship is purely defined by buying the work and aligning the interests. I don't want the fiduciary responsibility of a management relationship. So I'm very careful to use those words. I come from Hollywood, where there are managers and they take percentages of earnings, which I do not take. I align myself with the artist by helping the artist build a sustainable career through financing of production materials, studios, and buying the work. And I help guide the artists. You know, I don't want to be a manager per se, because I think art is too unstructured to put that structure upon. And I think if you try that structure, it fails. Art needs chaos, needs the order of chaos in order to succeed. And management is a very structured thing. I think it's a bit more complicated than that. You could call it managed chaos. That's what you need, but I don't want to be the manager of chaos.
Nice. Great explanation. Now, I always call that art market, and this business is part of the show business. Do you agree with that?
That the what? Art business is?
It's a part of the show business.
It is now, for sure, 100%. I think because of the way media works, I think art business has become show business in many respects, which I think is a good thing. You know, I think it's
also lots of collectors from Hollywood, from sports, you know, famous.
There are by no means enough collectors from Hollywood or sports. They make a lot of visibility because the galleries are like, the minute someone famous buys anything, they're like, oh, let's put it in the news. But there's a total poverty and lack of engagement in Hollywood and in sports, broadly speaking, in art. When an individual does participate, then of course it's all over social media. So when LeBron James is with Bryce Marden, you think the entire sports industry is collecting art. Well, unfortunately, they're not. But so you know, there's a tremendous amount of misinformation in how the media purports there to be engagement. Hollywood is barely engaged in the collection of art. So, you know, because you see a famous person walking around an art fair and the PR department makes sure that the photographer takes a picture of him in a gallery booth, it doesn't mean they're collecting at scale. There's a terrible shortage of collectors, and that needs to be fixed. And in order to fix it, it requires tremendous creativity in figuring out how to do that.
Exactly. You're from LA, you're from the Hollywood business, you know, film business. Tell us why then. Why these people are not interested? You know,
because they're not, because they're just not in. They're interested. They're insular. They're interested in their own business. I mean, just like people in the fashion industry, people are very insular. They're not engaged. One of the impetuses for them to collect is financial. Is here's an opportunity for you to make money. And then they're like, oh, well, now I can engage. So the speculation is what drives them to buy art. It's not the interest. It's the idea that it's potentially an asset through which they can derive economic benefit. That's the driving factor. As much as the art business would like to think that Hollywood is interested per se, I'd say the driving factor is economic gain. Nothing wrong with it, but there's, you know, Hollywood is a system that is very singular to itself. The way that recognition and benefit come from Hollywood is through its own system. the Oscars, the Emmys, the self-congratulatory systems of benefit that come from, you know, and I think, you know, is it changing? Yes, it's changing. It's changing as art becomes, you know, a global asset class, and their business managers are saying, well, you know, that's interesting. Let's look at this opportunistically. But Hollywood collects in a predictable way.
Oh, I see. Okay, so
you have
I
to
just
reduce
want to give,
by reducing the price. You basically can kickstart the market by reducing the risk through which people can enter the market. And once you reduce the risk and you get the work on the walls, and there's an understanding of the transformation that culture has in your personal environment, whether it's your home space, your office space, whatever space, that experience is transformational, because it's like putting a skylight in your roof. Suddenly you've got light from the sky in your room, and you're like, you never want to not have a skylight because it does something specific. Getting people to have that experience without having them to think that they need to make an economic choice, in other words, an investment, is one of the key problems in the art business. That's why I think, you know, what Royal Bank of Scotland did, I mean, what the Canadians did, what Art Bank Australia did, are very interesting. But I think the business is very much focused on preserving and fighting for a perceived finite group of people, a shortage of collectors, as opposed to really going out there into the Burmese jungle with a you know, cutting a clearing, doing real hard work in cutting through time and space to kind of like clear the brush to sort of to get more people to engage. It's really hard work. It's not, you know, it's very, very difficult, and it's, you know, and I think that's the work that needs to be done.
so in one sense, the rental art business may open the door to a larger collector's base, you know, once you rent.
Well, renting, direct sales, I mean, artists dealing directly with collectors, I think is very helpful. There's many different things.
Okay. So I want the audience also, let the audience ask you questions. So if there are questions from our participants, you're very welcome to open your microphones and ask your questions to Mr. Simchowitz.
So we were in Katoomba 2 years ago, and am I right? You have a bakery there? I'm Charlie, by the way.
I do have a bakery there.
Can you tell us about this a little bit? I mean, it's economics in a way, but it was really sweet to go there. So
yeah, so I was sitting in a coffee shop. I have a house. We have a house in the Blue Mountains. Rosie, my partner, and I went to this coffee shop called Anonymous, great coffee shop, and they would have sandwiches. The bread was great, and I said to the owner, who made this bread? He said, this guy Alex. He sits at night in the restaurant down the street and he bakes the bread. So I said, I want to meet him. So I came over. Me and Rosie, my partner, met with him, and he had been baking for 6 months. He was a French guy, and I'm like, you're brilliant. Let's open a bakery. So we went and we basically invested in the equipment. We opened our first shop in Lawson. Very much like a relationship one would have with an artist, to be honest.
Well, it's artisanal, I guess. So
and a year later, we opened this bakery called Black Cockatoo Bakery in Lawson, and we then opened a second location, Katoomba, which is now expanding to a bigger location. We're looking for a third location, and it's beautiful. We make some of the best bread in the world and some of the best pastries in the world. Yeah. You've tried them, right?
Yeah, we were there. I mean, at the time, my partner is Australian, so he was like, I think it's this guy who's also an art dealer who's running it, and so I just wanted to like confirm with you personally. But I just love this place so much. I had never been to Australia, and we went to the Blue Mountains. It was crazy. Like I loved it so much.
Did you have the cinnamon roll? Did you try the cinnamon?
No, I'm German, so I had like the plain bread, you know, the really grainy one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just love that shit. I'm a sucker for it. But yeah, it was so wholesome. Like coming to Australia, especially when you're based in Berlin as an artist, like everything is a grind, and then you go to Australia and the sun is shining, the people are nice. It's but cool. No, so I can confirm that. Sorry.
Yeah, no, and actually, you know, and this is like the cycle of life. So I was in the Blue Mountains and I found an artist on Instagram because I was like, damn, I go here all the time. I need an artist to work with in the Blue Mountains. It's like, so I met this young artist named Gene Ahern, who was working in sanitation. Like he was basically picking up, and his wife, who's a nurse, had a baby. And I went to a studio in the Blue Mountains in the middle of literally nowhere. It was like working in a derelict school. And the work is astonishing. And I started working with him about 1.5 years ago. And we work with him very closely. And I mean, it's just one of the most astonishing artists I've ever seen, Gene Ahern on Instagram.
Oh, we're going to check it out.
Yeah, but I think a lot of what we do is about building organic structures that are sort of self-financing and sustaining. The bakery is something we're very proud of because it's very beautiful, and the thing that I do that is so strange for me is I occupy a space publicly that is so different to who I am personally, and it's really it's almost like fictional. Like if you speak to people who work for me or with me or have worked, you know, anyone who's internalized, it's like, and you step out and you see this sort of reputation and this perception, it's a fiction. It's like, and so this is also like really enabled me to think about the system and say, well, what actually is happening here? What is going on? Is, you know, is what we read, like, oh, Hollywood collectors, is it real? And I think so many of the things that we see and think are real are unreal. And that basically makes us make decisions based on data that is just not correct. And I think the art world, to use a simple analogy, because I often get calls from people doing things, data companies and all this, I think it's like an iceberg. And I think what people see is literally just the thing above the water. And the real thing under the water is really the massive thing that no one actually has studied or has understood or is looking at. But that thing under the water is the thing that counts. The thing at the tip is actually not that relevant, but everyone gives it power. It gives it relevance. It's looking at it. But over time, the thing at the top melts away because it's exposed to the sun and it dissipates into the ocean, and the thing underneath remains. And I think we need to focus on that thing underneath, because that's the thing that builds and has built historically authentic positions, culture, and in every aspect of the world. But thank you for going to my bakery. I appreciate it. Thanks for the business.
No.
Well, I have a customer. Isn't it amazing? We have a customer at our bakery.
Great salesman, yeah.
Could I ask something real quick?
Sure.
So a lot of the talk today has been about this very interesting idea of trying to expand the art market, to expand the collector base, to make it easier for people to get in and start collecting. And I was wondering what your thoughts are on a lot of the pushback that probably exists from the established collectors and galleries and institutions and all that. A lot of the pushback that relates to the fact that in most people's head, the idea of buying art is seen as something very special as compared to buying any other commodity. Or whether that is you're investing in art, it's seen as something that is only for the super rich and super refined. And it's seen as something abnormal for someone of a lower financial or social stature to do. Like, it would be very normal for someone to have some savings on the side and say, invest in buying a second property, or I don't know, maybe buy stocks. But the idea that you would go as a common folk and invest in art is seen as sacrilegious almost. It's kind of like the whole art buying world relies on keeping it exclusive and keeping it special. And that's what allows these people to, you know,
so I think
it gives art a lot of its value. So how could we fight against that if you were to try to grow the collector space?
Let me give you a few examples, and I'm going to give you some factual examples. So we have 3,000 works in this company in 96 locations. we have 68 paying customers. Some have multiple projects. Of the 96 projects, 12 are free. So for example, we've installed, put art. One of the people we've installed art is a guy named Cal Ristiola who teaches at UCLA. He runs the foreign affairs thing. He's a teacher, he's a professor, doesn't have money. Another is a friend of mine who lives in an apartment that is 400 square feet. Another is a Mexican lady who works for us. So I think you can do a lot of pro bono work, and I see no difference. I see fundamentally no difference. There was a journalist big journalist who doesn't have money. He does podcasts, put art in his house. He has every major person in the world going there for podcasts, and I mean the biggest of the big. I see no difference between people engaging in art. I think the difference happens in our mind. I think from an artist perspective, from a local perspective, give your art away, give your art in trade for services, go hang art at a friend's house, do whatever it can. The difference and differentiation comes from the system. And the system says that so-and-so is an important collector. What's so interesting about the system now and the times we're going in, so many of these important collectors are disgraced by their activities. So it's a game of psychology, and that psychology is played at every level of the business. One of my frustrations with dealing with artists I work with, even some of them, not all of them, is that they're like, they've got opportunities to show with galleries that I think are good, but they're, oh, I can't be there. I want to be next to this artist. Stop playing the game, because you perpetuate the game by giving validity to people, by saying you have more power than us, but they don't really, because if you know who these people are, and you see how they live and how they think and how they're not actually intellectually particularly interested, stop validating people. And that validation occurs at every level. It occurs in the desire by young artists to participate within certain contexts. We use this word context. Context is a bullshit word. Context basically means, in the high school movie, you know, when the nerd comes to the lunchroom and can't find a seat to sit in because the popular people are here and here and no one wants to sit with them and they sit alone, that's context in the art business. And then the movie, the person who's the hero of the movie, eventually everyone comes to sit at their table because they've got something special that's unrecognized. And I think it's kind of like almost like a psychological game. It's like a game of dealing with your manifestation and how you psychologically see yourself and your peer group. We are all effectively equals here. We're not equal in some degrees. You might intellectually be much more sophisticated than me. You might be more empathetic than me. You might be more decent than me. You might be kinder. But in effect, let those attributes come to the fore. Give each other the privilege and the benefit. And I have a few rules in my business. I will speak to anyone. I will take calls from anyone. I will be brief, but I will be open to everyone. In my business, I have 3 rules for my employees, people who work with me. Be assertive, be insubordinate, and be your own boss. The removal of hierarchies essentially has to occur as a psychological and intellectual state. And if the artist can do that, the artist is liberated from that toxic requirement to be part of something that naturally excludes them and makes them insecure, and then makes the work weaker, and then makes the artist question themselves. And that's really, really difficult to do. Now, you're in Turkey, so it's not as difficult, but when you're in New York City and you are 10-minute cab ride away and your peers are doing shows at galleries and everything is contextualized, everything is hierarchical, everything's on top of each other. So in effect, by being geographically isolated or not in the center, you acquire magical secretive powers of being able to not be undermined by the psychology and toxic abuse of exclusion, which is effectively a sort of a systematic series of microaggressions that undermines your security as an artist. And the key to making good art is to be secure, but not so secure that you don't innovate and don't understand your weaknesses and being able to see, you know, what is and what is not. Now, on a side subject, one of the most important 7.5 minutes of anything that you can read in the art business or listen to is Marcel Duchamp's speech that he made in Texas in 1956. It's called The Creative Act. And I urge all of you to listen to it on Spotify, on YouTube. It's 7.5 minutes, and you should listen to it 10 times over. And I think Duchamp describes absolutely elegantly and perfectly the condition of art, the condition of what makes art become art, the condition of the artist, the condition of the viewer, and the condition of how all of us are integrated into one unified system of cultural production and consumption, in which all of us participate in that kind of amazing alchemic process of turning something that is produced into a cultural product. And I think the understanding of the sheer scale and diversity and integration of all the forces that take place in that process, in that alchemy of art becoming art, can help liberate your validation of I was the right gallery signed me. And gallerists have all different kinds of things that they do that are political, that are self-serving, but you have to free your mind. It's a sort of a liberation of spirit that's required in order to sort of, you know, put an end to a system that fundamentally is not necessarily built to include you. It's not necessarily built to promote the best art manufactured. That's my answer to that.
Very interesting. Yeah, thank you very much.
Pleasure. What a great name you have, Odysseus.
Thank you.
Hi, hello. My name is Özge, by the way. I want to ask a question, if you don't mind. Yeah, we talked about like how you discover artists and what you value when you are discovering artists, like the quality, creativity, etc. But like, what are you looking for when you, I don't know, searching for an employee? That's because like I want to, I don't know, get into the art market, but not as an artist, but as an art dealer. But I don't know where to start because like they don't teach us in like this in the school. Where do you start if you want to be an art dealer?
The first thing you can do is go buy yourself a pack of chewing gum at the cafe and try sell that chewing gum for $10.
Yeah, $10 is a lot of money in Turkey.
So so once you can do that, that's your step one to becoming an art dealer. And if you can do that and learn how to do that, that's what art dealing is. It is a magical form of conversion into making someone believe that something is more real than it is. It is a magician's game being an art dealer, and something that young artists need to learn to respect, especially those who show artists at the beginning of their careers. It is a magic trick almost, and to perform magic, you just got to try doing little magical things every day.
I guess it's a kind of a like you learn as you go.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, I will try to chew dumpling.
Next question.